broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here is Reverend Martin.
All right, thank you, Dr. Blackwell. Let me say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but certainly never good night, and never, ever goodbye, because I hate goodbyes from childhood. My name is Reverend Nathaniel Wayne Martin. I'm the pastor of New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in the city of Los Angeles. We're located at 8916 South Main Street. And in addition to, for some of you, I would like to say Hotep, about Ghani, and how are you? And we welcome you to any and all of our services. We have service tonight, as a matter of fact, at 7 p.m., which is an evangelistic service, and you're welcome to exercise your gift within reason. And we have to say that because some people, really take advantage of an open door like that. And so, within reason, of course, you're invited to exercise your gift. Could tell you a funny story, but we better stick with what we have before us. This offering that we are presenting to you right now is more or less a social justice offering. It takes its credentials or its direction from the status of the world, the society in which we exist, because we don't live in a bubble, and nothing that happens to us is an abstraction. You can always say when it happens to somebody else, it's an abstraction, but when it happens to you, it is definitely a concretion. Oh, let me hasten to add that we are worshiping with our sister church, the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church, pastored by my good friend and compadre in this Christian work, the Reverend Dr. Della F. Hollinis. And she's been a good friend, and she has opened the doors of the church and welcomed us in. And they always say when the charismatics and the Baptists get together, there's always a shouting in the camp. So you can look forward when you visit to have a good worship experience. We hope you get a deeper experience with God before you come out of the building, and maybe God will speak to you as you worship with us in the service. Okay? Very good. Our marching orders are from Deuteronomy, chapter 15, picking up the reading at verse number 12, even though we are not limited to that verse, but that is one of the pivotal scriptures for what we are about. We are about social justice, and that social justice must always involve economics, because of the deprivations that our people have endured here in our sojourn in this, which some call a criminal enterprise called the United States of America. And be that as it may, we know that we are here, and we must thrive, and we must prosper, and we must survive. And we're laboring, as the old civil rights devotee said, to save the soul of America, because the soul of America is certainly on the decline. If you saw the January 6th of last year, when President Biden was supposed to get the electoral confirmation, but other forces were seeking to overturn that election, which brings up the interesting observation by Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, and he said the central idea confronting us is the necessity that is upon us to prove that popular government is not an absurdity. We must answer this question now, whether in a free government the minority has a right to break it up whenever they feel like it. He said this will go far to prove, if we fail in this, it will go far to prove that people cannot govern themselves, words to that effect. And so as we reflect on 1 year ago, on January 6th of 2021, that a coup was attempted. But yet, because of the complexion of the coup plotters, and we are willing to overlook the treason that was attempted. They call it an insurrection. It was indeed that. It was an attempt to overthrow the duly elected government of the United States, and they almost came close to success. And hats off to Donald Trump, who was the organizer. And while the January 6th committee is, I trust they are doing something, because if they lose the midterm election, then all of that they have done is going to be for naught, because it will be invalidated as quickly as the Republicans retake the Congress. And because this is an off-year election, usually the party in power, incumbent party, suffers a great defeat or a setback. And we saw it under Obama, we saw it under Bill Clinton, and you go back generations, it was other administrations. It has always been a pivotal point. That's why it's dangerous just to have an executive order, because if you sign an executive order, say, okay, you can have access to these type of funds for this type of need, but then the next administration comes in and it says, well, no, we're going to cancel all of those out, as President Donald Trump did to President Barack Obama. Every executive order that Obama had signed and had tried to enforce, then, of course, when Donald Trump came in, he invalidated, he obviated all of that. And so that's the risk you run. And while we're on that subject, we must pray for the Supreme Court that the first African American woman will be chosen to sit on that august body, and possibly try to make a change. It's hard for one person. Thurgood Marshall couldn't do it, and he was the first black person ever on the Supreme Court, and of course he was a progressive. But once Earl Warren and those others had retired, then of course Thurgood Marshall was isolated, and until he himself had to retire. It's all he could write was dissent, dissent, dissent. And we know how the country has evolved. I don't want to say we have progress, because it looked like you take 2 steps forward, but then 1 step backward. And sometimes it looks like you make 1 step forward and take 2 steps backward. But we trust that God will provide us a way out of a no way. But we trust that the process will work. We don't know. We got 2 weaklings, 2 weak chains in the link. Senator Sinema and Senator Joe Manchin, at least, are 2 weak links in the chain that could derail the chances of the first African American woman to take place on the highest court in the land. And so we offer up our prayers and our dedication and our motivation and our activism to try to make that a reality. But it's going to be tight, and it's going to be fought. The black woman has always had a hard time here in this white man's America. And so that is no exaggeration or hyperbole to say that this is going to be a monumental battle. But it is worth fighting, and I trust that we, all of us, progressives and people of goodwill across this nation, will get behind the nominee. And we trust she will not be another Clarence Thomas. We need another Thurgood Marshall up there. So please be in action and be at your post of duty, wherever your post of duty is. Pray about it. Write your senator, your congressperson about it, and don't give them no rest. Let's get in the street about it and try to make this a reality for the country. It would be worthwhile. And the president hasn't said who the nominee is yet, and but we know that there are at least I think over 5, not 7, very already vetted people to choose from. Dr. Ketanji Jackson and Dr. J. Michelle Childs, and are 2 that I see that are front runners. I think Ms. Childs is from Congressman Claiborne's district there in South Carolina. So he's throwing his support behind her early, and as is Lindsey Graham, surprisingly. And so we'll wait to see what the Biden administration, whom the Biden administration will choose. All right, yes. Next on my agenda, this is the 4th day of Black History Month. As you know, the study of Black history has been neglected in this country and has been given short shrift by the early historians, because of course they had a purpose, they had a reason why they would not acknowledge the contributions of the African to the civilization and of world history. And I keep in mind that history does not begin in Europe. History began in the land that was formerly known as Kemet. But then when the invaders and explorers began to go forth and have their sway, then of course it became the continent of Africa, and we know, but that's where civilization started. You can look in the Bible, and the rivers that the Bible tells you about in the book of Genesis, none of those rivers are in Europe. They are only found in Central Africa. And so that is the cradle of civilization. They scurry about, they mean the white settler colonialists who still want to hold sway in our educational system. But that authority is waning because people now see just how callow and how false and how biased and how jaundiced their journalism and their historical record is flawed. Case in point, in medicine, why the Greeks did not start to develop medicine until they had went down in the geography of the world where the Africans were living and had developed the civilizations of Kush and Nubia and Egypt. The land that they called Egypt, of course, was originally part of Africa until the cartographer, the white cartographer, with his pen just drew it out. Is that right? And separated it. They began to call it the Mediterranean because of the Mediterranean Sea. But in actuality, to accurately portray Egypt, you have to realize that Egypt was Kemet. Kemet was the name of Africa, of the land of Africa, and at one time the whole landmass that is the continent of Africa was just called one Ethios, which means the land of the burnt people. And of course, when the Romans, well, the Medes, the Persians, the Romans, and the Greeks, the Medes, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans, and that ilk began to explore. Then that's when the dark ages of history began to commence, because rather than write accurately, as Herodotus and some of those other early explorers had done, then there became this false narrative that Africa made no contribution, no meaningful contribution. But when you go down in Africa and you look at those pyramids, those weren't built by Europeans. Those were built by the indigenous people who lived there. And keep in mind that the world was going on thousands of years before the land that became known as Europe began to live in a house with a window, or else the inhabitants began to wear shoes. Africa had a heyday. It had developed its architecture. It had developed engineering, it had developed mathematics, it had developed the geometry, and all of those things, broad base for the pyramids, and then the angle for the top, 43-degree angle. All of those design methods were developed in Africa by Africans, and the scientists cannot fathom today how they were able to quarry those old limestone, and yet bring those 16, some of them 16 tons of limestone from one section of Africa and to the pyramids, and set them in place so that the tolerance was so tight that you could not introduce a knife point in between the stones. How did they do that? And that is still a mystery. But yet the European conquerors, when they came, of course, then they began to rewrite history and tried to put a white face on those pharaohs and upon those queens and upon those engineers and those architects and those mathematicians. And keep in mind, started out talking about medicine. We talk about the Hippocratic Oath, but Hippocrates was a latecomer in the field of medicine. As a matter of fact, he himself says that he was a child of Imhotep. And this Imhotep was the true father of medicine, which his name means he comes in peace, peacemaker. And that was the origin of the Hippocratic Oath. Was Imhotep, who had lived thousands of years before Hippocrates, and they had developed mortuary science. They were doing open heart surgery. They were doing eye surgery. And I am talking about those who were belittled by the history book and said that they made no meaningful contribution. Well, if you write in the history book, then of course you're going to put your people in. That means you're going to put mine out. So the conspiracy in education has been the greatest detriment to even the European, whether they were Harvard alumni or Yale alumni or Brown alumni, all of those Ivy League universities. And all of those Ivy League is just another word for saying that those were the schools, colleges, universities, where the slave holders, the planter class, sent their children, rather than keep sending them overseas into Europe. That's why they developed Harvard, and that's why they developed Yale, and that's why they developed Princeton. But all of these were settler colonialism schools. And by that time, the development of the doctrine of white supremacy was in the ascendancy, and so everything white was good and everything black was bad. And so that is how the world is in the sorry shape it's in today. A black person can't groan, but somebody from the other race is, say, look, I can use that. and all of our gestures and all of our utterances, all of our mannerisms. Someone has said recently that they want everything, okay, 5 minutes. They want everything we got, but they just don't want to be us. And that is true. That's what James Baldwin said. They want every gesture, every move, every affectation, a mannerism of a African American, but they do not want to be an African American. So that sad condition still continues, still obtains. And so, did I say enough about Imhotep? I'm trying to do my Black History program right here, but you can't start with the African American history in slavery, because we were kings and queens, and like I said, architects and artisans and engineers and explorers. There are tons, well, not tons of books, but they came before Columbus, which is by a book by Ivan Van Sertima. It gives the evidence. It shows illustrates the fact that the Africans had come over to the Caribbean, and yes, down to Mexico, thousands of years before Columbus sailed over from Spain, and mistakenly thought he had reached India, the West Indies, when he was really over in what was then called Hispaniola, the country that now is called Haiti, and the other end of it is the Dominican Republic. But Columbus was lost. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't know where he was. If you check his journals, I don't know why he told the truth in his journal, but he lied every other way. He said that he took an oath of all of his crew members, that they swore an oath that they were in India, and he said he would cut out their tongue if they would dare to breathe the truth. And so that has been the story of mankind in down through the history. So if you start with a distortion or a fallacy, then you got to end with that fallacy or that distortion. It's like if you build a pyramid, and if you are off 1 inch at the base, then you're going to be off a foot when you get to the top. You can't. If you start wrong, you're going to end wrong. And that was what was so amazing, that the engineers, modern engineers, have gone back to those old pyramids, and mind you, those pyramids are thousands and thousands of years old. But the base of the pyramid is almost perfect. That means from inch to foot to yard, corner to corner, is level. It's level. And you can't hardly get a building today like that, with that degree of precision that those Africans put into those pyramids. So I really didn't get very far today, but this is our first entry into Black History Month. And like I said, you have to start right. And our history doesn't start in 1619. No. So those of you that are still working, and I thank God for the laboring people. And if you are working on one of those jobs where they don't want you progress. Look, you may have to tell those people that if you're not going to pay me right, I'm going to have to do what? Go somewhere else. All right? If you're working for some people and they don't want to pay you, take it from me. In 2022, don't work for them. Thank you, Doc.